Welcome to the Near Memo, a weekly conversation about search, social, and commerce. What happened, why it matters, and the implications for local. Okay, so let's move on to my item, which is the helpful content update, which I have a kind of dyslexic relationship with. I want to call it HUC as opposed to HCU. And then when I see
I want to call it HBCU.
Yeah, that's exactly what I think. When I see HCU, I think of HBCU, which is somewhat awkward, I suppose, for them. But anyway, so there's been a lot of discussion about the helpful content update. I think it was only a week ago or week and a half ago that Danny Sullivan posted on the Google blog. The keyword, I think, that they were creating this new. There's going to be a new algorithm update, and it was going to reward content created by people for people, and essentially punish content created for indexing purposes or ranking purposes, which is how most content is created these days. So there's been a lot of good discussion, and I've linked to a number of the posts, Glenn Gabe and Lily Ray and Barry Schwartz and others have done roundups. They've done a lot of thoughtful kind of technical commentary on what is likely to happen, and how to think about your content going forward. And Google also has guidelines about that. What I'm interested in is really, why is Google doing this? What's going on? I mean, Google is in a place now where it's bringing more and more and more kind of machine learning, AI, natural language understanding, sophistication to search results. And as we've discussed before, there's a kind of paradoxical view in the market that the results are getting worse. And so I'm curious about why Google is doing this. And my personal view, and I don't know how long this has been in the works, is that Google is responding to those criticisms, that this is really about addressing the perception that Google's results have, quote, gone to shit, as one blogger put it, and trying to regain some sense of, trust, quality, whatever, credibility, in the sort of the broader marketplace. Thoughts on that? Agree? Disagree?
Agree. I would also add to that and say it may be them trying to get ahead of the coming tsunami of AI generated content that they felt their previous algorithm was not well enough equipped to deal with. So I feel like that has to be part of this, in addition to the broader authenticity sort of zeitgeist that you referred to.
Yeah, for sure.
I guess the question is, what is authenticity for me? And the problem is that what I find in the results these days is leading sites that are very generic and not all that helpful, right? It's like I can get to CNN with or without Google. And I'm looking for more in-depth stuff. And it will be interesting to me to see if high quality, lesser brand content makes a rise. It will also be interesting to me to see if listicles become less visible or less obvious. I mean,
yes, that will be a very interesting development. I despise listicles, and we'll see what happens to them. I mean, it's supposed to be rolling out now.
Yeah.
Well,
this week and next. And I'm also interested in the image side of it. Their hubris around AI and the power of AI, I think, is contributing to this, as you said, their rollout of AI. And I'm curious if their increasing understanding, albeit flawed, of images on content will influence what they perceive as helpful or not, and or the opposite, unhelpful. So,
yeah, I've been sort of on Twitter. I've been sort of ranting about B2B content for a long time, and it'll be interesting to see how B2B content in particular. I mean, consumer content also, but B2B content is really designed for lead gen or ranking, basically, essentially. Yes. And it will be interesting to see what happens.
It'll also be interesting in local context to see if it has an impact on location landing pages or local search pages that try to spread services across different markets with
Well,
roughly the same content.
I mean, the landing pages question is an interesting one because people are always trying to, multi-location brands and others are trying to figure out how to scale landing pages, but have enough unique content on them to make them indexable and not simply duplicate content.
But are they helpful?
Well, this is a philosophical question, right? I mean, Google has quality raters, and presumably they're going to be involved in this. But helpful is a really subjective kind of term. I was most struck, before we go on to you, Mike, I was most struck by the language in Danny's post, which was sort of, I heard echoes of the sort of TikTok marketing claims in there, authenticity, right? And some of the discussion that we've talked about and seen around the 40% of young people are, when they go to choose a place to go eat lunch, are not using Google, they're using Instagram or TikTok. That was the Prabhakar Raghavan kind of quote. The folks that are doing that are saying that Google is inauthentic or TikTok is more authentic, that they're real people on TikTok and they're less trusting and less interested in the otherwise kind of static 2D content that you see in the Google SERP. And so I saw that kind of critique reflected in in the language of that post, subtly, but nonetheless present. And I thought that was very interesting, that, Google sees itself having a problem. They've been doing this internal research for some time. And, I think, David, your point is really well taken. The AI content is going to, is already showing up to varying degrees. And it really threatens, it's kind of an existential threat in a way to Google, because if the SERP becomes flooded with crap, people will just increasingly abandon Google. I mean, that's a sort of hyperbolic statement, but it's sort of true in a certain way. You'll try and go to this is what these other sites are. These social media sites are an alternative discovery tool versus Google. So
thanks for joining David, Mike, and Greg. To stay on top of the latest developments in local, subscribe to our newsletter at nearmedia.co. We'll see you next week.